Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're going back in time a bit. Buckle up as we explore the surprising parallels between the evolution of 20th century management and music. You heard that right. From the mechanical calliope to the improvisational world of bluegrass, get ready to hear how the roar of the factory floor found its rhythm.
It's an intriguing connection, to say the least. We often box management into this rigid technical corner, but it involves as much human creativity and interplay as any art form.
Absolutely. So to really unpack this idea, we're diving deep into Emergence, a play in 4 acts, which lays out this unexpected connection. Think Ford, General Motors, Toyota, Chrysler, giants of the automotive world. But we got to start with the OG innovator, Henry Ford, and his game-changing assembly line. Okay, now stick with me here. Imagine a calliope, that massive steam-powered organ.
Yeah.
What's that got to do with cars, I ask?
It all boils down to this idea of the mindless machine. That's how Emergence describes those early factory systems. You see, both the assembly line and the calliope are all about maximizing efficiency, stripping away human intervention during operation. They're both working from a preset playbook, so to speak.
And when you picture Ford's River Rouge complex, this behemoth of a factory, it really does feel like one giant, well-oiled, synchronized machine, right? Each worker doing their specific task again and again. And sure, it revolutionized how cars were made them affordable for the everyday person. But was it efficient on a human level?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Emergence is critical of this mindless machine model. As incredible as it was for production, it often ignored the human element. Workers became almost like, well, cogs in the machine, leading to massive boredom and this feeling of being easily replaced.
Just like a calliope churning out the same tunes, note for note, with no room for a little improvisation. Yeah, Ford paid his workers well, but as Emergence points out, money doesn't solve everything. It couldn't make up for the dehumanizing aspects of the work. So, if Ford's assembly line is our calliope, what happens when we get to General Motors? Alfred Sloan's divisional management approach, that feels like a whole different tune.
It is, and Emergence makes this really clever comparison. It's like moving from a calliope to a full-blown orchestra. See, Sloan was directly responding to the rigidity of Ford's system. He realized the need for specialists, so he broke down GM into these separate divisions, each with its own area of focus.
Okay, so instead of everyone playing the same note, you have different sections, like an orchestra, strings, brass, woodwinds, each with a leader reporting up to the conductor. And the conductor's our CEO, right?
Exactly. That's the idea. Now, this division structure, it allowed for more variety in their product line, more customization, and ultimately this led to the concept of planned obsolescence, the whole idea of releasing new car models every year.
So it's progress, right? Moving away from just churning out the same thing. But it makes you think, even in an orchestra, those musicians, they're each bringing their unique skills to the table, but they're still playing from the same sheet music, following the conductor's vision.
Right, and that's a key point Emergence raises. It's like, ideally, you'd want the most talented violinist leading the violin section, right? But in these corporate divisions, sometimes management skills were valued more than actual deep knowledge about the products.
So you might have someone enforcing the rules who doesn't actually grasp the nuances of the music they're creating.
Exactly. And Emergence argues that this disconnect, this lack of deep expertise within those divisions, led to its own set of problems. It's a theme that's addressed in some fascinating ways as we transition from the very structured world of the orchestra to, wait for it, the world of jazz. That's right, we're entering the age of Toyota.
Now we're really getting into the groove, right? Toyota and jazz. I got to admit, this comparison really grabbed my attention. How does a car company, even a really successful one, embody the spirit of, say, Miles Davis?
Well, it's all about Toyota's totally revolutionary approach, spearheaded by Taiichi Ohno. We're talking about the Toyota Production System, or TPS, as it's more commonly known.
Okay, TPS, got it.
Right. So Emergence highlights how TPS, with its focus on Jidoka, Kanban, and Kaizen, and I know those are some serious mouthful words there, but they each represent a piece of how TPS completely flipped the script. It shifted the focus from rigid top-down management to empowering workers and making continuous improvement a core value.
Okay, hold on. I'm all for a good jazz riff, but what do those Japanese terms actually mean? Break it down for us.
It's a good point. Emergence doesn't just throw around jargon. So let's imagine you're a worker on a Toyota production line, right? Jidoka. This first term, it's like having a built-in stop and fix alarm. So let's say you spot a defect. You don't just let it slide down the line. No, you pull a cord, literally stopping the entire production process to address the problem right then and there.
Wow, that's incredible. Talk about empowering. It's giving those workers a real sense of ownership, a sense of responsibility. They're not just robots blindly following orders.
Exactly. And that's where Kanban comes in. Think of it as a visual system, often using cards that signals when materials are needed. So you're minimizing waste, keeping production humming along, but it's more than that. It's about everyone being tuned in to the entire system, not just their little part in it.
It's like everyone's in the band. And Kaizen, if I'm remembering this right, is about always striving to get better, always looking for a better way to do things.
You got it. It's all about fostering a culture where everyone, from the folks on the factory floor all the way up to the big bosses in the executive suite, they're all encouraged to speak up, to find ways to improve the process. It's that constant evolution, that adaptability, that really starts to sound a lot like jazz, doesn't it?
I like what you're doing here. So instead of a conductor dictating every note like we talked about with the orchestra, we've got this group of highly skilled individuals, our Toyota factory musicians, jamming together, riffing off each other, and constantly iterating, experimenting to improve the overall sound of their production line.
Now you're getting it. It's a beautiful analogy, right? Each musician in a jazz quartet, they're masters of their instruments, improvising and innovating in real time, but they're also crazy in sync with each other, listening, responding, adapting to what they hear.
And that's how Toyota, through TPS, revolutionized the game.
Yeah.
Not just car manufacturing. I mean, their ideas have influenced so many industries. It was more than just a management philosophy. It was a total mind shift in how we think about work.
Totally. And, while Emergence celebrates everything TPS accomplished, it also recognizes that even the most cutting-edge systems have limitations. As the world keeps changing, organizations have to keep up with those changes.
Which brings us to Chrysler. Late 20th century, things are very different. From what I gathered in Emergence, they were wrestling with this whole other beast with their C3 payroll system. We're not talking about physical assembly lines anymore. This was a full-on software meltdown. And this time, the musical analogy takes us to, get ready for this, the super fast-paced, insanely collaborative world of bluegrass.
You said it. Chrysler in the late 20th century, man, they were at a crossroads. Their big project, the C3 thing, it was tanking, deadlines whooshing by, and those traditional management methods, totally useless. And then Kent Beck walks in the door with this radical solution.
Kent Beck, the Agile Manifesto guy. Now, that's a powerful combination. This is where I get really interested. I'm a huge bluegrass fan. But how does a genre known for its banjos and lightning-fast picking translate to managing a massively complex software project?
It's such a cool parallel. Think about that bluegrass energy, how each musician is just so good at what they do, bouncing off each other totally in the moment.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
Right, and that's where Agile comes in.
It's that whole idea of breaking down these huge tasks into smaller, more manageable pieces, right? Like those crazy fast musical phrases you get in bluegrass, each one building on the last.
You got it. Emergence really gets into how Agile throws out that rigid top-down hierarchy in favor of these cross-functional teams.
Kind of like how all those different bluegrass instruments are weaving together to make this awesome sound.
And forget those mountains of documentation. Agile's all about direct communication, just like those bluegrass musicians feeding off each other's energy on stage.
It's like that moment when a musician breaks into a solo, pushing the boundaries, but still totally locked in with the rest of the band.
And that's Agile in a nutshell. Quick iterations, constant improvement, always adapting.
And that feedback loop, that constant communication, that's crucial, right?
Absolutely. It's about collective intelligence, everyone contributing their expertise, not just taking orders from the top.
So we've come a long way from that rigid calliope structure to orchestral divisions, then the free-flowing jazz of Toyota, and now we're jamming out in a bluegrass session with Agile.
And here's a cool little tidbit Emergence points out. Bluegrass, it's got these deep roots in folk music, which actually connects back to the sounds of industrial machinery coming full circle.
Wow, from machines inspiring music to music inspiring new ways of managing those same machines. That's mind-blowing. It really makes you wonder, if this evolution is a continuous loop, what's next? Where do we go from this Agile bluegrass jam session?
The million-dollar question. Emergence hints that the next stage might not be about, optimizing individual organizations, but more about understanding how entire systems are connected.
So less like a factory, more like an ecosystem, where the lines between companies and their customers, maybe even competitors, start to blur.
Exactly. Think of a rainforest. It thrives on diversity, interdependence, constant adaptation. It's a whole new way of thinking about collaboration, about creating value.
It's exciting and kind of scary at the same time, right? It's like going from a well-defined orchestra to something More like a rainforest, chaotic, but still harmonious in its own way.
It makes you rethink that word manage, doesn't it? What does management even mean in that kind of environment?
That's a great question. I guess it's not about abandoning structure altogether, but realizing that the strongest systems, like a rainforest, they thrive on diversity and feedback.
They're always changing, always adapting.
It makes you wonder, from Ford's assembly line to this future system-based symphony, how much of this evolution is driven by technology versus, human beings just changing how they think?
That's the heart of it, isn't it? Emergence doesn't give us all the answers, which is fine. But it reminds us that the most successful companies, no matter what era they're in, are the ones that can embrace change, adapt their systems, and never lose sight of that human element.
From the Calliope to Bluegrass, who knew the evolution of management could be so musical? A huge thank you to everyone for joining us on this incredible journey. Be sure to tune in next time for another thought-provoking deep dive. Until then, keep those gears turning and let those ideas flow.